Welcome to the new JFK show number 136. And I'm still suffering from my eye palsy, but the doctor tells me, and Dr. Fetzer said I'm looking better. So I believe all your prayers are working. So let's keep it up. All right, tonight we have a look at, this is in the null writer on the new JFK blog, which Larry has just started. We're going to go ahead and flip our hourglass, half hourglass. There are no witnesses who have stated this, and there is no evidence to support this claim. Warren Commission Report number 640 by co-authors Howard Willens, Norman Relich, and Alfred Goldberg. So Larry, so go ahead and tell us a little bit more about why these people are lying through their teeth and just who they are.
Well, hi, Gary, Jim, and Don. Well, this is something that has not been studied that much in JFK research, and I was just telling Jim that it's interesting to start. One of our jobs has to be to put names and faces behind the Warren Commission, and the Warren Commission report was a very shortened version of the Warren Commission, 888 pages, and this was released in paperback form, and it was distributed throughout the nation and world, you know, and that was the first report on what happened to John Kennedy.
Yeah, so I have a copy of it. Remember the old conspiracy museum across from Dealey Plaza? I got my copy there.
Well, the thing about this volume is that if you search, if you read the who's behind it, you know, there's no authors, you know, there's absolutely no attribution to this volume. It has no page, you know, that tells you who wrote it.
I guess it just wrote itself, Larry.
Yeah, and we know why, obviously, you know, because it's been thoroughly proven, disproven as far as history is concerned. But, you know, going into the nuts and bolts of the Warren Commission and who did what, you know, we know the attorneys that formed the hierarchy under Earl Warren, and but you know, these other people who contributed, for example, these three gentlemen, Howard Willens, Norman Redlich, and Alfred Goldberg. And Alfred Goldberg was a historian for the Air Force, and he was a big guy, you know, in World War II, and he was practically retired when LBJ asked Earl Warren that to bring in a historian to cover and to write the Warren Commission report and to be there. Apparently, he trusted historians a lot, you know, and they brought in Alfred Goldberg, and Don has made tremendous observations and contributions as far as the Jewish angle here in the JFK assassination. And it was very interesting because at the end of the day, we realized that they took care of writing the history that was going to be taught and accepted by
schools.
Americans.
This is what you're going to get in your schools, and you're going to get it in your libraries, and this is it. And who wrote it, Don?
Yeah, and I'll let Don make a couple of comments there, if he will.
Yeah, the Jews. They wrote history. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Okay. You know, I found a little biographical info on Alfred Goldberg.
Right.
Yeah. Here's just a couple of blurbs here on him. This is from the JFK counter coup site, Bill Kelly. I think he got this from the DOD website. Alfred Goldberg was the past chief historian of DOD.
Right, the Air Force.
Yeah, it says Dr. Alfred Goldberg, an eminent and respected military historian, served as the chief historian for the Office of the Secretary of Defense for 34 years. He began his service to the United States in 1942 with the U.S. Army, rising from the rank of private to captain and deploying overseas with the Army Air Forces to England and France.
What was his educational background, Don?
Okay, we'll get into that in just a second.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Yep. He worked in various capacities, ultimately as a field historian. He left active duty in 1946, but remained in the reserves and retired from the Air Force in 1978 as a colonel. From 1946 to 1965, Dr. Goldberg worked for the U.S. Air Force Historical Division as a senior historian. During that period, in addition to earning his PhD in history from the Johns Hopkins University in 1950, he was a visiting fellow at King's College, University of London, 62 and 63, a lecturer at the University of Maryland for many years, and a recipient of a Social Science Research Council Fellowship. In 1964, Chief Justice Earl Warren brought him onto the Warren Commission staff, where Dr. Goldberg served as a historical advisor and co-author and co-editor of the Warren Commission report. From 1965 to 1973, Dr. Goldberg was a senior staff member at RAND and also lectured at the University of Southern California and the University of Southern California at Los Angeles. In 1973, Dr. Goldberg assumed duties as the chief historian with OSD. He received the Department of Defense Distinguished Civilian Service Award and the Presidential Meritorious Award. He's a longtime member of the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, whose members include distinguished historians, archivists, and members of the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the Supreme Court.
Well, it's interesting that they use a DOD historian, no doubt because the Joint Chiefs had signed off on the assassination, and they wanted to have control over how it would be presented to posterity.
Yeah, and listen,
I think he may have lectured at USC, but the other school would probably be Cal State that had what was the location, Hayward?
It just says University of California, Los Angeles.
Yeah, UCLA.
Yeah,
University, UC. Yeah, sure, UCLA. Yeah. My parents graduated from UCLA.
Oh, and here's a blurb. Listen, check this out. Okay, so keenly aware of the historical significance of the attack on the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001, Dr. Goldberg joined with other military historians in documenting the event and its effect on the Pentagon and the military and civilian workforce.
They brought him out of retirement.
It's clear he's a high-class phony fraud. You know, he's willing to write a history independent of the facts. Where did he get his degrees, Don? I never got that. I mean, if he wrote,
he got his PhD at Johns Hopkins University.
Yeah, Johns Hopkins.
In history?
Yeah, PhD in history from Johns Hopkins.
Well, that's a reputable degree.
Yeah.
Well,
Field
it's all about the
historian.
credentials, Jim. It's all about the credentials, of course.
Yeah, but what else? Where did he do his undergraduate, Don? What other degrees does he have?
Let me check his Wikipedia.
Did he have passed?
Let's see.
By the way, looking at this null writer thing, the speculation, notice how they load it to be distracting.
Well, we're going to have a very interesting, down at the bottom of this, of how that speculation thing originated. Actually, there were 127 different points of speculation that they had to cover towards the end because things kept popping up, Jim, and it's just so unbelievable, and the way that they would, obtain the information from writers that were very...
Well, look how they put it, Larry. Immediately after the shooting, a motorcycle policeman was seen racing up the grassy embankment to the right of the shooting scene. Now, that would be something you could see, but pursuing a couple seeking to flee from the overpass?
Oh, yeah.
But they just threw that in gratuitously. Obviously, they didn't want to acknowledge he was riding up the grassy embankment in pursuit of a shooter because he believed shots had come from there.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. They're so blatant about all of this.
And that must have been quite a scene, Jim. These motorcycles, driving up the embankment there. And we're going to present some incredible information here because, the commission's finding. Go ahead if you want to continue what you were reading there, because this is what it really, really is incredible.
Yeah, commission finding there are no witnesses who have ever stated this, and there is no evidence to support the claim. A motorcycle policeman, Clyde A. Haywood, dismounted in the street and ran up the incline. He stated he saw no one running from the railroad yard adjacent to the overpass. Subsequently, at 12:37 p.m., Haywood reported that the shots had come from the Texas School Book Depository building. Well, what about Bobby Hargis? What about Jackson? What about those who actually know? What about the report in the Oklahoma?
It's important to point out that Beverly Brunson investigated this, and nobody believed her. Nobody, paid any attention to what she was investigating and what she was researching. You can go down. You can scroll down.
Just slowly, Gary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And we wrote about this.
Stop there.
Because supposedly there was speculation, and then when she went and she had all 26 volumes of the Warren Commission with the exhibits and everything. And when she went to volume 22, you can go down a little bit now here. She found these four.
Read from your chapter, Larry.
Yeah. Well, in 67 and 68, after months of investigation and careful evaluation of the pertinent testimony and the FBI interviews, that is where the meat and potatoes is in the Warren Commission. These are in the 26 volumes that I just mentioned, okay? And in volume 22 specifically, which we're going to see these quotes here, these citations, Brunson determined that one of the motorcycle jockeys, as part of the immediate escort, ran his bike up the grassy knoll, chasing what was presumably one of the shooters. The Warren Commission report went as far as trying to dispel the ugly speculation about the knoll rider, quote unquote, with the blatant lie that Gary just cited earlier. There are no witnesses who have ever stated this, and there is no evidence to support this claim. Now, for some unknown reason, and even though it was duly reported in the newspapers, and Jim, you presented this in Dallas, the newspaper clipping there, that weekend, Brunson discovered the actions of this escort were ignored and never pursued by researchers and investigators. In a letter written in 1967, she lamented, in fact, quote, "In fact, so far as I know, nobody but me has ever been interested in him," unquote. In her paper titled, quote, "The President's Motorcycle Escort, Activities Immediately After the Shots Were Fired," unquote, Ms. Brunson cited four crucial witnesses who observed the knoll rider: George Davis, James Simmons, Luke Winborn, and Clement Johnson, who never testified before the Warren Commission and were only interviewed by the FBI. And those are the interviews. Go ahead, show us the interviews.
All right, here we go.
Okay, and what Mr. Davis had to say, that his attention was directed to the motorcycle escort, what said that a motorcycle policeman drove up the grassy slope. Now this one is interesting because he's saying that towards the Texas School Book Depository building, they're trying to bring everything, the attention and the focus to the TSBD. Okay, but then he's saying that he went towards the Memorial Arches. Anybody who's been in Dealey Plaza can tell you that the Memorial Arches are a little bit away from the TSBD building itself. There's what they call the pergola up there at the top of the embankment. Okay, so those two, that sentence does not really, it doesn't jive in my mind. Okay, and then he jumped off his motorcycle and ran up the hill. Okay,
right, that's Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, later on, we know that it's Jackson because of what Brunson's investigation. But Simmons was standing next to S.M. Holland on the overpass.
Yeah, okay? read what Simmons says.
Right. I just did. That a motorcycle patrolman drove up the grassy slope, and then Winborn, the police officer.
You didn't read the whole quote, Larry.
Yes, I did.
Toward the Texas School Book Depository building, jumped off his motorcycle, then ran up the hill toward the Memorial Arches. Simmons said he thought he saw exhaust fumes of smoke near the embankment in front of the Texas. Exhaust fumes of smoke? Exhaust fumes? From shots. Smoke from the barrel of a rifle. Simmons then ran toward the Texas School Book Depository building with a policeman. He stopped at a fence near the Memorial Arches and could not find anyone.
Yeah, he's got them all over the place, right?
See, they're going out of their way to contrive, to change and alter, add phrases that don't. belong there to deceive everyone.
Doesn't make any sense whatsoever, that entire sentence. That's why I put it up there. They're trying to obfuscate what he's trying to say about the motorcycle patrolman policeman going up the grassy slope. They couldn't have that. Okay, now Winborn stated that very shortly thereafter, the motorcycle escort disappeared and one motorcycle was abandoned by the police officer riding it on the grassy slope, okay, of Elm Street, and this officer rushed up the steps leading up to the pavilion and was lost from sight. I mean, that's pretty descriptive right there, Jim. The rest of the paragraph, is
this
not
is
really
such a beautiful, clear proof that they were suppressing evidence, changing evidence, obfuscating what happened. They claimed there was no evidence whatsoever for it, and here Beverly pulls out 4 witnesses right off the bat.
That's right. And then Johnson stated his attention was attracted to the motorcycle escort, and at the bottom where he says, Mr. Johnson stated that the white smoke was observed near the pavilion, but he felt that this smoke came from a motorcycle abandoned near the spot by a Dallas policeman. Okay, now this next image is from the Bell film coming up here, where
you can see the creases from the motorcycle tracks.
I know, and which tells us, even this Bell film has been heavily edited.
Slightly higher, Gary. Roll it just slightly higher.
Yeah.
Now right here's where Larry's talking about the tire tracks.
Yeah, of course.
Right here.
Right.
And if you look at versions of the Bell film on the internet, on YouTube, you'll notice that they're very fuzzy, very fuzzy. These are they're captures from stills, not from the movie itself.
Yeah.
And you can find them on the internet, and these are very, very clear, but it's not complete. It's not. So this Bell film, we know. And we actually, if you observe the Bell film, you'll notice that there's a lot of time missing from the film. Okay, go ahead, Gary. But those are. I'm on the air. I'll call you when I'm on. So Beverly wrote that newspapers were replete with stories about what she called the motor jockey hero. Here's a sample, and note that this is a late Friday edition, which was published before the media came under the control of the cabal.
Yeah.
All right. And Jim also, you presented this.
Scroll a little further, Gary. A little further.
And I don't know about you guys, but this is pretty specific here, And the way that the reporter describes it, pell-mell, I don't know that he could have used a better adjective.
He also says, apparently in pursuit of the assassin.
Yeah. This is November 22nd. Those late editions, they were still, sprinkled truth, here and there.
I don't know, Larry. Would it cost you a nickel for the paper?
Yeah. Well, you hear pell-mell all that often anymore.
Oh, of course. I had to look it up. Exactly.
Yeah. Sort of outdated. So you want to read it?
No, it's good. Go ahead.
I like to read it.
Oh, okay.
If that weren't enough to convince the reader about the veracity of this event, how about actual witnesses who were interviewed shortly after by the late Mark Lane? S.M. Holland and Lee Bowers described what they saw from different locations and perspectives. S.M. Holland from the bridge of the triple overpass over Elm Street, who would have seen the event unfold from above as the limousines were coming right at him, and Lee Bowers, who was stationed at the railroad mini control tower in the parking lot behind the picket fence. By far, S.M. Holland and James Simmons had the best view from atop the overpass. Now go down.
Now we can listen to what S.M. Holland had to say.
All right, here we go. Don't forget, there were no witnesses.
Yeah, right.
Policeman threw his motorcycle down in the middle of the street and run up the embankment with his pistol drawn. He was running toward that particular spot. And also another motorcycle policeman right behind him tried to ride up the embankment on his motorcycle, and it turned over about halfway up the embankment.
So he got both Hargis and Jackson, Larry.
That's right. That's right.
And went on over to the fence with his gun in his hand.
That's right. That's a great observation. He's talking about both Hargis and
Jackson. Why don't you play that one again, Gary?
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
That was stunning.
And a policeman towed his motorcycle down in the middle of the street and run up the embankment with his pistol drawn. He was running toward that particular spot. And also another motorcycle policeman right behind him tried to ride up the embankment on his motorcycle, and it turned over about halfway up the embankment. And he got out, he got off his motorcycle and left it laying there and run on over to the fence with his gun in his hand.
There's an honest man, Larry.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just tell by looking at him.
A Dalasite.
All right, y'all ready for
Good old Lee.
Yeah, Lee Powers.
The first ones up here on the scene, other than those who, of course, who were standing around, including two on top of the triple underpass, was one who rode a motorcycle up the incline coming up from the lower portion of Elm Street. And he rode perhaps 2/3 of the way up or more before he deserted his motorcycle. At the time of the shooting.
There you go. Don't forget, no credible evidence.
You're just talking about Jackson. Yeah, let's read. Still not convinced? Okay, I know. How about live people who are still around and who might have been there that day? How about photographer Bob Jackson, who was recently interviewed by the 6th Floor Museum? The same Bob Jackson who took the iconic Oswald shooting photograph in the basement of City Hall, where the DPD had their headquarters. Here, Jackson, in less than 20 seconds, describes the actions of the Null Rider in astonishing detail. By the way, I want to thank Stephen Fagan for overlooking the importance of this wonderful video and pursuing the truth and allowing it to be placed on YouTube in the public domain. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
You can run this one a couple of times.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that as I surveyed the scene, just for a moment there, I could see the confusion, the bedlam, people covering up their kids. Motorcycle cop rode his motorcycle up the grassy knoll and just let it keep running. He jumped off, the motorcycle went on until it fell over.
That's incredible. You know, the detail that this man is offering, you know, and what that was less than 15 seconds, you know, because he's talking about something else, you know, before that.
Here it is in case somebody didn't catch it.
Yeah.
So when I surveyed the scene, just for a moment there, I could see the confusion, the bedlam, people covering up their kids. Motorcycle cop rode his motorcycle up the grassy knoll and just let it keep running. He jumped off, the motorcycle went on until it fell over.
The motorcycle went on its own, Jim.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
You know?
I love it. Now, Gary, have you already flipped your hourglass?
Still got a little sand left.
No. There's quite a bit left. I mean, have you flipped it already?
Oh, it's only a half an hour.
That surprises me. Okay, I'll read this. And finally, how about Jerry Coley, who in our recent post stated, and it was there I saw people laying all over the median grass between there, a couple of motorcycles laying on the side of the hill, people and police running up toward the picket fence. Scroll down.
Yeah, these are illustrations from Executive Action. You know, I thought, you know, Mark Lane had and I just found these. I thought that you know, throw them in there because
you know, Larry, this seems to me to reinforce Mark Lane's credibility quite substantially. I mean, look at how many years it's taken to uncover this, and yet he was reporting it accurately early on. I think that speaks very well of Mark Lane.
I would say so. At least this portion, that time in history in JFK research, you know, the early first generation researchers, you know, they had a lot of bickering amongst themselves, you know.
Now, listen to this absurd quote from Alfred Goldberg.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love that.
Conspiracies are like the elves because there is no evidence. You have to believe in them to know they are there. I mean, that's just insulting.
Yeah.
So if we have proof that multiple conspirators, for example, joined together to rob a bank, that's a conspiracy because it's two or more people collaborating together to perform an illegal act. We can't know that. They're actually elves because there's no evidence. I mean, this guy's clearly obfuscating, misleading, pulling rabbits out of hats to mislead the public.
Well, he was a figurehead. He was Don gave us, the biography earlier, and all of his military work and all of his military stature, and as a historian, in universities and everything, he was respected, and whatever he wrote, he wrote history. That's what's so incredible about this. This is we are focusing on one person who actually set out the history of the JFK assassination, Jim.
That's right. Let me read this. I think it overlaps with what Don previously read. The bulk of the Warren Report was written during the summer of 1964 by Norman Redlich, a senior staff lawyer, and by Alfred Goldberg, a U.S. Air Force historian. In 1964, Chief Justice Earl Warren brought him onto the Warren Commission staff, where Dr. Goldberg served as an historical advisor and as co-author and co-editor of the Warren Commission report. From 1965 to 1973, Dr. Goldberg was a senior staff member at RAND and also lectured at the University of Southern California and the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. Don, did you find out where he did his undergraduate and so forth?
No, I couldn't even find a Wikipedia page for him. So,
well, they want to bury this guy.
Yeah, of course.
Let me read what else we got here. Yeah. Freelance writer Nobuhiko Ochai notes that Alfred Goldberg, who drew up the final report stating there had been no plot against the president, along with Dulles and Ford, were members of the Georgetown Strategic Research Center, a CIA think tank. Dr. Goldberg was a senior U.S. Air Force historian who, working directly under General Counsel J. Lee Rankin, it should be, played a leading part in writing the final Warren Report, Edward J. Epstein Inquest, the Warren Commission, the Establishment of Truth, published by Hutchinson of London, 1966, page 19. Quote, the lawyers tried to use conspiracy theorists who were themselves trying to use the probe as a stage for their own accusations. In a secret meeting, Howard Willans listened to journalist Thomas Buchanan, who was soon to publish an early conspiracy theory book, lay out his suspicions. Willans and Alfred Goldberg, the commission's historian, then wrote an appendix casting doubt on 127 speculations, including Buchanan's. The lawyers also relied on the work of many spy agencies. Wiretap transcripts and spy photos are part of the secret files Congress may soon open. Stay tuned when we reveal the identity of the null writer.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's not speculation that many people heard more than 3 shots. The shots were coming from different directions. That's not a matter of speculation. Buchanan was a responsible guy.
No, well, Buchanan had to leave the country to write that book. He published it in Europe, one of the very first, very thin volume, actually a very small paperback, but a lot of the information that he published still stands today. Now, what I was really interested in, Gary, that Georgetown Strategic
Research Center,
a CIA think tank, okay, and all the references. Yeah. And RAND and all the references.
A CIA think tank, see?
This
is where they play both ends against the middle. They have their assets as though they're reporting independently when they're controlling the outcome.
Well, and so, he who controls history, well, the rest, so.
Okay, that's what I was going to say now. Having a high-powered Jew writing your history, I mean, this is right out of the Protocols of Zion. I've got the one-page summary of the protocols here. I think
go through it, Don.
Yeah, I think it might be appropriate to read this here. Okay, so Goyim are mentally inferior and can't run their nations properly. For their sake and ours, we need to abolish their governments and replace them with a single government. This will take a long time and involve much bloodshed, but it's for a good cause. Here's what we'll need to do. 0.
The good cause being Jews ruling the world.
Yes. Yeah, that's, yeah,
Just so we haven't any doubt about the worthiness of the cause.
exactly. 0, place our agents and helpers everywhere. 1, take control of the media and use it in propaganda for our plans. 2, start fights between different races, classes, and religions. 3, use bribery, threats, blackmail, lies, and deception to get our way. 4, use Freemasonic lodges to attract potential public officials. 5, appeal to successful people's egos. 6, appoint puppet leaders who can be controlled by blackmail. 7, replace royal rule with socialist rule, then communism, then despotism. 8, abolish all rights and freedoms, except for the right of force by us. 9, sacrifice people, including Jews sometimes, when necessary. 10, eliminate religion, replace it with science and materialism. 11, control the education system to spread deception and destroy intellect. 12, rewrite history to our benefit.
That's
13,
That's a pretty grim agenda you got there, Don.
yeah, it gets better too. 13, use our media to create entertaining distractions. 14, corrupt minds with filth and perversion. 15, encourage people to spy on one another. 16, keep the masses in poverty and perpetual labor. 17, take possession of all wealth, property, and especially gold. 18, use gold to manipulate the markets. 19, introduce a progressive tax on wealth. 20, replace sound investment with speculation. 21, make long-term interest-bearing loans to governments. 22, give bad advice to governments and everyone else. And the last point, 23, blame the victim.
That's very damn interesting, Don.
Day in and day out.
I mean, that pretty much rings true, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the only one that I think is actually a reasonable proposal is a progressive tax on wealth or income. I think that's actually appropriate, but the others are clearly part of a master conspiracy, for which you're offering quite a bit of evidence there, Don, to take control of the world by a group working behind the scenes in accordance with those principles.
And notice how the historical writing is so important here. The writing up and
you got to be high up in the military, Air Force, to be a historian. You have to
reinventing history. Yeah. And you know where it says they were talking about 127 different speculations. You know, if they had that many different items of speculation, you know, that was an incredible amount, you know, and each and every one of those, well, it's probably, if you examine it, you know, I'm probably going to find that they're, you know, they weren't true.
Each of the 127 had a fragment of the truth, so they deliberately distorted him, like saying he was doing a couple who seemed to be fleeing the scene. You know, how ridiculous is that?
That's right, and they sort of created a mishmash of events, you know, and crossing them over. For example, the Hagen. We all know that Hagen parked his bike on the north curb, and then he went and he ran parallel to the picket fence, and in that Cancellaire photograph where he's standing atop there at the corner there, that's Hagen, you know. And what they're doing here, what they did with the null writer was they sort of melded the one with the other, you know, and but they're totally separate events. Okay?
What about Marion Baker? I don't see him mentioned here. I mean,
no, because Marion was way in the back with
closer to the book depository.
He went into the book depository,
right.
And the others,
I believe he was supposed to shoot Oswald there in the lunchroom.
Possibly, and the others like Curson and McLean, those guys, you know, they went right past the event and went on to Parkland, and those guys were behind. This guy by the name of Evans, you know. So basically, we have time missing from the assassination, Jim, and with the revelations of the escort, the Newcomb tapes. Which are giving us, you know, filling in, you know, that time. And now this, it's sort of like a lot more happened down there than they're admitting, and it's been.
As the Zapruder film shows.
You know.
Right. This is further refutation of the adequacy of the Zapruder film or the Nix film or any of the other whole movies that show.
That's right.
Parts of
the
events.
Yeah. The Brunson, on and on and on. Yeah.
So Larry,
the Hughes.
What it reveals, Larry, Gary, Don, of course, is that you can't really have an idea of what they took out unless you can reconstruct what actually took place. I mean, that's why it's so difficult to sort out why they would edit the Zapruder film until you know that William Greer pulled the limo to the left and to a halt to make sure JFK would be killed, that he was hit twice in the head while it was stationary, that the officers dislodged from the Queen Mary, that Hargis piped his bike and ran in between. Jackson motoring up. I mean, then you realize why, my God, if that stuff had been there originally, everyone would have known it was a conspiracy with multiple shooters.
No, Jim, and a Secret Service man or an imposter gets nailed up there, gets shot up there.
He was, well, I mean, the phony.
Yeah, right,
the guy who had the dirty nails, that was one of Chauncey Holt's fabricated Secret Service credentials he was showing. That wasn't a real bona fide.
Yeah, but we
have the blood. We have the blood, Larry.
Right. Yeah. When we did the polling,
if there weren't any Secret Service agents up there, whose blood do you think that was?
Well, we proposed during the Coley show that we did that it could have been a phony Secret Service agent who was working, with the team there. And they just picked him up and shipped him over to Parkland, and that's where Bertha Lozano saw him, on a stretcher with his head covered, with a suit coat, and he was wearing a suit also. And this guy they never checked him in.
He was dead.
Yeah, they did blood work for him, and he disappeared, and so. All these events that we're now seeing that happened, they have been totally cut out from the film,
Right.
And the record, the photographic and film record, they have been totally exterminated, totally removed.
They don't want to give evidence that could rise to inconvenient questions they don't want to answer.
Well, it's very disturbing, obviously, because if they can intimidate that many witnesses into just not even thinking about talking about any of this, because the people that were there in the median, who were watching, this motorcycle going up the knoll, and the event that happened up there, the shootout. I think they had what you might qualify as a firefight. Up there, shooting back and forth, who knows, but
somebody got nailed.
I'm struck by this photograph at the top where you can see William Greer, the man who was driving John F. Kennedy to his death, relatively clearly there.
Yeah, and also notice the reflection on the limo, how impeccable that is, with Officer Shaney. You can make out all the parts of the bike there,
There's the tire, there's the fender.
And I take it, by the way, that Greer was an Irish Protestant who had resentment of the Irish Catholics, and that this was one of the reasons he threw in on it.
Yeah, he laughed when he came out of his deposition. He was laughing.
With Kellerman and
I think Kellerman had a little bit more of a conscience, He spoke about shots coming from a lower angle into the limo.
That's true.
And
if you just listened to Kellerman, you'd conclude there was a conspiracy.
Yes, exactly, Jim, exactly. And he was there, You're right.
Well, Larry, you want to tell us about some of these other stories?
Well, if you want to, I think we've done something. Did we do Emery Roberts?
Did Don have more he wanted to contribute?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
I've got.
Let's close it out with Don.
Okay, I
still want to tee off on Goldberg.
Well, maybe not necessarily, Goldberg, per se, but world jewelry. Okay, here's the blurb from the protocols. Here's from Protocol 10. Paragraph 3, our goal, world power. We count upon attracting all the nations to the task of erecting the new fundamental structure, the project for which has been drawn up by us. This is why, before everything, it is indispensable for us to arm ourselves and to store up in ourselves that absolute reckless audacity and irresistible might of the spirit, which in the person of our active workers will break down all hindrances in our way. 4. When we have accomplished our coup d'etat, we shall say then to the various peoples, everything has gone terribly badly. All have been worn out with the suffering. We are destroying the causes of your torment, nationalities, frontiers, differences of coinages. You are at liberty, of course, to pronounce sentence upon us, but can it possibly be a just one if it is confirmed by you before you make any trial of what we are offering you?
This sounds, Don, this sounds very much like the view attributed to George Soros that he wants all the races to intermix until they're all roughly homogeneous. And then the Jews who haven't participated in this racial intermixing will emerge to lead the world.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Then will the mob exalt us and bear us up in their hands in a unanimous triumph of hopes and expectations. Yeah, that's the goal. It's to get rid of
I wonder if Charlie had read the protocols, because he wanted to have this race war where he felt that the blacks were dumber but stronger and they'd beat the whites, and then Charlie would come out of the house in order to lead them.
Yeah, and save everything, save the world.
Well, okay, the Jewish population is not that big, so what they're going to do is, the plan is to breed a bunch of black people and then have them invade our countries, and that's what you're seeing. And then they'll either, like termites, eat us out of house and home.
You mean by way of migration?
Yep. Yeah. Migration. Yeah. Blend us out of existence.
Which Obama was supporting massively.
Correct. Yeah, right out of the protocols.
Which Trump is opposing, and all the liberals are attacking Trump because he's opposing a major threat to the integrity of American society.
Exactly. Yeah. See, just by is Trump a shill? Well, just by the mere fact that he is,
trying to control migration.
Yep. Yeah. He's saying, hey, the nation has borders. The Jewish agenda is to get rid of all national boundaries.
And they're moving, by the way, to a cashless society, which Soros says is the way the bankers are going to bring in the new world order. Because if it's a cashless society, then the bankers control all transactions that take place, except for those done by barter.
Yeah, well,
happening already in India. In India, they already have it.
One world currency.
And how is it working, Gary?
Well, it's just being implemented, and not only that, you have to turn in your old money to make sure that there's not much of a black market, and you have to use your thumbprint to trade in your money.
Aren't an awful lot of poor people going to starve on the street? I mean, this is just outrageous.
Well, it's already happening in India. They've decided to go ahead and have cashless society where you can't really hold money.
Well, it's the bankers, it's the elites who are using India as an experiment, as a pilot project.
Coming home to a town near you. Now, another thing about this white genocide and mixing us out of existence is the commercials. You can barely ever see a commercial without an interracial couple now.
It's true. It's very damn strange, isn't it, how they're so prevalent now, Gary? You're making a very astute point.
Yeah, we talk about that one a lot.
It's not just on, sorry. It's not just on commercials. Like if you watch HGTV when they're going around buying a house or they're looking at houses, you'll have mixed couples all the time. Yeah. All the car commercials. It's just, and it's obvious to me. And the idea that we should be mixing, I mean,
it's a form of propaganda, yes, to mix the races and to dilute.
Right. And another one is in sitcoms where they always frown upon having more than 2 kids or 1.8 kids. That's another form of white genocide. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it can be almost seemingly harmless, but it's effective.
Well, the goal of the whole program is to destroy white Christian society. And then once whites are out of the way, then the Jews feel they'll be able to rule over a.
Well, it looks like the migration program is having quite a bit of success in Europe, which is just in chaos over all of this migrant assaults on women. And
Yep.
the top cop in Sweden was reporting rape, armed robbery, rape, assault, rape. The 95% of which were done by the migrants. And it created quite a stir in Sweden because they don't want to believe it.
Yeah, what about all the Syrians in Minnesota, Don?
The Somalians, we're basically, Minneapolis is getting turned into Mogadishu.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
and it cannot be by accident that this is happening all over the country.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah. Now the borders are wide open for a reason, and that's to get rid of us.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's
one time there's so much opposition to Trump from the elitists who want to introduce the New World Order, the cashless society, and to mix the races. They're upset about anyone who would impose borders and strict requirements about who should be allowed to immigrate. When the Donald went down to Mexico, I paid attention to their immigration policies. You're not allowed to immigrate to Mexico unless, number one, you can show you have something that it will contribute to the good of Mexico. You must be able to make a positive contribution to the good of society. Number two, you're not allowed to immigrate unless you can show you have the financial resources to support yourself and the members of your family. And number three, if you're a Mexican citizen and marry someone else just to make them a Mexican citizen, you're subject to prosecution and imprisonment. Those are good policies.
Yeah, but when we enact those sort of policies here on this side of the border, there's an outrage.
Right.
Yeah, diversity saying, for all. How could you beat doing the same immigration policies as Mexico? Treat them alike, the same way.
I know that they have massive protests now that we're building a wall. Mexico has a wall on its southern border with Guatemala. Nobody talks about that.
Oh, I love that, Don.
Yeah, there's a huge wall.
But Senator Barack Obama and Senator Hillary Clinton both voted for this fence, which is another term for the wall, in like 2006. No one talks about that either.
No, and Israel is adding 10 kilometers to their border wall.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Paid for by the U.S. taxpayer. So,
and then there's China.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not going to get anything longer than China.
Yeah, they've got a pretty big wall over there too, don't they?
So this wall idea is nothing new.
So I'm told.
Yeah. So don't forget, diversity for all, except them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They're very strict practices that Jews are not supposed to marry non-Jews.
No homosexual wedding is allowed in Israel. No marriages between Jews and non-Jews can take place in Israel. And look at what
very diverse.
No, and look at what Jews are advocating here in this country.
LGBTQ, XYZ.
That's right. Race mixing.
Don, what do you think is the basic motive behind the LBGT stuff and all that? Why
Christianity, to destroy Christianity.
Yeah, it's perversion, and it's also to lower the white birth rate. The more homosexual couples you have, the less kids you're going to have.
Gay is good. Gay is great. We don't overpopulate.
Correct. That's what it is. They want blacks having 8-9 kids, per couple, and they want whites having 1 or
1.8.
Yeah, or 0. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And
well, Larry, take us back to whatever you'd like to add in addition. Maybe talk about Emory Roberts.
Sure. If you want to go into there, we already did this, I believe.
We already did Emory. With
the.
I remember this.
Yeah. We did this.
Well, we do want everyone to know that there's a great new JFK blog, and it's just loaded with information, and it's the most honest, show-free information that you can find. And right now, it's only a month old. We've got quite a few titles. Larry's at the helm. Ladies.
Excellent.
And all of this is irrefutable. This is 100% backed up with no flim-flam whatsoever.
Well, is there anything more any of you want to discuss? We don't have to go a whole hour.
Okay, I just one blurb I wanted to throw out. I'm reading a book this week. I just started reading it yesterday. It's called The Camp of the Saints. It's a 1973 dystopian novel written by a Frenchman where shiploads of third world people show up on the shores of France and over in the country. And he said they were coming from India, so he got the continent wrong, but everything else he nailed back in 73.
Coming here to the United States.
Well, France and Europe is mainly what he's talking about, but you could apply the same thing to any white country.
Larry, what would you like to add here to our conversation?
No, it's been, it's like I said, I think it's time that we start putting names, throwing names out there for those who are responsible for the biggest lie ever perpetrated on the American public, which is the notion that Lee Oswald,
Alfred Goldberg.
Yeah, that Lee Oswald fired 3 shots, which is completely impossible to do in the time. I know. Not even gonna go back.
Oh, everything's nonsense once you sort it out.
I mean, that single bullet theory, I mean, it's the biggest load of Jewish bullshit.
And what I would like is for these gentlemen to join the likes of Arlen Specter and Joseph Ball, and those that we know
as prominent perpetrators of an elaborate hoax.
Right. That's what I would like to to stress.
Have you looked into Norman Redlich?
Yeah, he was him and Goldberg worked together, okay, and Willens and.
Have you got a little video of Redlich there at hand?
No. Probably on YouTube you can find something. But all these people after the Warren Commission, they were what they did was they fanned throughout the country, doing talks and everything in support of the Warren Commission. In fact, this Goldberg later on published interview that he did with Earl Warren and Earl Warren never gave interviews, and for Goldberg.
No, I think Earl Warren was too embarrassed by the whole mess,
That's right. He disappeared. Yeah,
he was supposed to stand for something, and here he was, ridiculed and humiliated into performing a role that he should never have undertaken. Because had there been a bona fide investigation, someone been accused of the actual assassination and so forth, that would have eventually worked its way up to the Supreme Court. But now you had the Chief Justice already compromised by participating in this investigation called the Warren Commission.
Absolutely, and where he was a no-show most of the time at the proceedings. I just wanted to throw a very funny anecdote. I was at the Supreme Court visiting 5 or 6 years ago, and I went and had a picture taken with his bust. That was
of Earl Warren.
No, I didn't know it was Earl Warren. And then when I took the picture, and when I turned around to find out who it was, I was taking the picture, next to the bust. It was Earl Warren. I erased it.
Oh no, Larry! You should have kept that.
I erased it.
That was a good record. The one guy the concealer, the other the revealer. Right? The dead fraud and the living student. I mean, really, give us a break. You should have kept it. You should have kept it.
Well, too late now, but it happened.
Yeah, Earl Warren, he was browbeaten into serving on the commission by crypto Jew Lyndon Johnson.
Of course. And a lot of people that he brought were his cronies.
Gary, would you like to add a few parting thoughts here before we conclude tonight?
All I can say is Alfred Goldberg must be burning in hell right now for every child that he lied to through the school books and his tours and everything else. And you know what? No one's ever really called you out, to my knowledge, but Larry Rivera in the JFK show says you can burn in hell, Alfred Goldberg.
You want to take us out, Gary?
Yeah, I guess we'll leave it on that note. All right, this has been the JFK show. I'd like to thank Don, Jim, and Larry Rivera for another good show, and we'll see you next week.
Coup d'etat in slow motion. connecting the dots between the assassinations of Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme, JFK, Robert Kennedy, and John Lennon. Now available on Amazon and lightonconspiracies.com. Coup d'etat in slow motion.